we are back and live. Welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for January 18th, 2023. I'm your host, David Michalek. I have been in the credit repair business for now over 10 years. Good Lord. I've probably done about 10 to 15,000 credit reviews, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of accounts that have been removed as a result of the disputes that I participated in over the years. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I've learned. Now here at Credit Versio, it's a whole different ballgame. Now we have software that does virtually the entire process for us. So if you're here today, either one of two things is happening. Either one, you got an invitation this week because you're new to Credit Versio, in which case I'm here to answer all your questions, and I'm so glad you're here. Or two, you are one of the regulars and you're here all the time and just looking to pick up some great tips for how to improve your credit or understand how credit and credit scores work. I'm also a certified FICO Pro. Not many of us, actually, maybe 50, 60 of us in the United States. And also, virtually all of my training has come from people from the bureaus, from FICO, from VantageScore, from the CDIA, that's the Consumer Data Industry Association. That's pretty much everybody that's the trade association for all 15,000 data furnishers. Also, they wrote the Metro 2 code and what's called the Credit Reporting Resource Guide. It's the Bible. It's what all of the data furnishers who supply information to the bureaus abide by. So, very familiar with the subject matter, and I'm here to help you understand credit better and have the best credit repair outcome possible. So these Q&As are all about you. See, we've got a little less than a dozen people watching right now. Usually we have additional people jumping on. So please take a second, introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. This is kind of a closed group a little bit, so you don't have to share private information if you don't want to, but really what I'm here to do is answer your questions. And then I also like to kind of weave in a topic of the week, and today I'm going to be talking about best practices for dispute letters. Jamie, welcome. Good to see you. I don't know if this is your first time. I don't know if I recognize your name, Jamie. So if this is your first time, welcome. So the way that I like to start out is, and you'll hear me remind you of this all through the live, is if you think of a question, got something you're struggling with, if you're new to Credit Versio, not really sure how things work, or just got a general credit question, trust me, there is nothing that I have not heard at least 1,000 times in the decade plus that I've been in this space and I've been teaching in this space. So don't be afraid to pop your question on here. I'll be more than happy to put it up on the screen and answer it for you. Okay, so let's get started with, this is always an area of tremendous confusion, and it was confusing to me too when I first got into the space a little over 10 years ago. When I got into credit repair as a client, I was one of those guys back in the Great Recession where I just leveraged a whole bunch of property and had a bunch of credit card debt, and we all know how that unfolded. And even though I was very fortunate to unload a lot of the property that I owned, I had a lot of investment property, I had a lot of credit card debt, and then that just kind of tumbled out of control. Next thing you know, bad credit. I think when I hired the credit repair company that I eventually went to go work with, this is many, many years ago, my mid score was a 543. Took about 6 months to get into 8 months to get into the low 7. So it was some work. And it took about another year and a half or so to get into the low 800. So going from 543 to 720-ish really wasn't all that hard. Like I said, about 8 months or so. And really what I did, I just followed experts. And fortunately, the company that I worked for had a lot of great experts. It had 2 additional certified FICO pros, which I eventually became. In fact, that's the little thing that's behind me right there. It's a FICO. I don't know if you can see it. That's a certified FICO pro. So anyway, dispute letters are one of those things that tend to be very confusing. And the reason for that is people put a lot more into it than what they really need to put into it. Okay. Oh my God. Sorry about that, Jamie. You know what? Here, I need to be taking some ginkgo or something, because I'll tell you what, my memory as of late is getting a little getting a little spotty. Yeah, love the true info that me and John provide. I had this thought, and I mention this every now and then, that I think if I was on TikTok or Instagram, and I was spouting just a bunch of hyperbole and nonsense and all that stuff that people want to hear, I probably have, 500, 800 people on here watching. But the problem with the credit repair space, and I'm going to do a video on this, by the way, and it's for no other purpose than just to help people understand what's real and what's not. And that is that there's a reason why you probably don't want to listen to about 99% of people that are in the credit repair space. I know that's a really, really damning comment, and it's a very true one, and I'll tell you why. It's actually pretty easy. So the estimate is that there's probably about 50,000 credit repair businesses. I'm not going to say companies because it's mostly just mom and pop shops in the United States. 50,000. Okay, and nobody has more than a 5% market share. So that's kind of interesting. If you look at the largest companies in the United States that process disputes for clients, Credit Versio is probably neck and neck with Lexington Law and CreditRepair.com. We probably are a little bit bigger than them now. Then you've got Ovation and Sky Blue and the Credit Pros, the Credit People. You've got all these big companies, but nobody actually has more than 5% market share. Isn't that interesting? As massive as all these companies are. We've got Credit Versio over 200, I think as of this morning, over 205,000 people have created a Credit Versio account. Every day it's between about 450. First week of January, we had days where about 800 people were creating accounts, and still nobody's got more than 5% market share. Well, what does that tell you? It tells you that all these little tiny credit repair businesses across the U.S. are all sharing the hundreds of thousands of people that sign up for credit repair every month. So is that a problem? Well, actually, yeah, it kind of is, and here's why. A lot of these companies, a lot of these businesses, I should say, sign up. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there's a lot of big companies out there that sell you the, hey, start a credit repair business, no experience necessary, you can make a whole bunch of money. It's the wild, wild west. And what you find is there are tens of thousands of people in this space who are just listening to credit repair people regurgitate stuff that's demonstrably wrong and factually incorrect. So that's one of the reasons why I get on here and do these lives, and why I bring people from the bureaus. I brought on John Alzheimer, he is the most quoted, most accessed credit expert in the United States. Right behind him is Steve Rieger, who used to work at TransUnion. He was there for 25 years. He used to run the entire dispute division on the West Coast. I also brought in Judah Stein, who was one of the most recognized FCRA and FDCPA attorneys in the United States. So the reason why I do that is I want you to understand what's real and what's not real, what's factual and what's fantasy. And unfortunately, the credit repair space is full of it. People want to argue all the time, like, no, you got to delete your old addresses. And if you want to get things deleted, no, that's 100% wrong. Or you got to use Metro 2 compliance. No, even the CDIA who wrote Metro 2 have come out and said there's no such thing as Metro 2 compliance letters. That's not what we wrote this stuff for. But anyway, people want to believe it. So what are we here to do today? I want to talk to you about some great to-dos when you're doing your dispute letter. So just let me know. I see we got about a dozen people watching, and it's going up every couple of minutes or so. So let me know, what round are you in? Are you brand new? You're in round 1, round 4? Let me know. Just pop it up here. I'm not going to call on you and make you answer some questions. It's not like, you don't have to hide in the back row like we're back in high school, so you don't get called upon. But I want to see where you're at, and then I'm going to start giving you some points for dispute letters. But I want to just get an idea of roughly where you are in the dispute process. So while you're doing that, round 1, Rick. Okay, perfect. Rick watching on YouTube, great. So round 1. So a couple of things, some tips I want to give you. Number 1, I want you to bear in mind that the dispute process is really, really basic. Okay. Let's see. Sent off round 2 weeks ago. No results yet. Okay. Sometimes it goes that way. Chandra, brand new. Okay. Very good. All right. So Under what circumstances, and this is going to be for you too, what is it? It's C. Freemac? Hopefully I got that right. So this is especially for anybody who's in round 1, 2, 3, they're not seeing any results. So one of the reasons why when people ask us, well, what's the deletion rate? What's the probability of getting something deleted? You don't really know. There's 4 circumstances under which things get deleted from credit reports. This is right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. When an account is erroneous, which means it's wrong, it's just not supposed to be there, not yours, could be somebody else, mixed file, okay? Erroneous, nobody uses that word, but that's right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Outdated, so it's gone beyond that 7-year time limit. And frankly, most of the time, bureaus, just as a rule, will delete things at about the 6-year, 9-month mark just to be safe. Just because they don't want any possibility they're going to get sued if maybe something went a little bit longer than it was supposed to. Okay, I got that from somebody who worked inside of the Equifax dispute division, and also I confirmed it over at TransUnion and Experian. They all do the same thing. Okay, erroneous, outdated, incomplete data, meaning data that's just missing some information. Now, most of the time, you don't see that too much anymore because typically bureaus will scrub that before it even gets posted if it's coming from a data furnisher and is incomplete. Okay. 4th one, unverifiable. Okay, so what are the 2 reasons or 2 circumstances under which things tend to get deleted? Well, it's usually because it's not correct, or the big one, number 4, unverifiable. Unverifiable is really your friend. In fact, if I had to guess, and also remembering what my friends at the bureaus have told me, a lot of times when you get a deletion, and let's just assume that maybe it is your stuff, and it's not 7 years old, it's not fallen off, maybe it's brand new, maybe it's 6 months, 8 months, 2 years old, or whatever the case may be, and you get a deletion. A lot of times that happens because the data furnisher is just simply not able to verify it or verify it in time. Sometimes the bureaus will take it upon themselves to delete the information from your credit report if the data furnisher does not provide them with the correct information or if they don't verify it. So a lot of times you're seeing things get deleted because they're unverifiable. So going back to C-Free Mac, I'm sorry if I'm probably butchering that one. If you're doing round 1, round 2, round 3, and nothing is getting deleted, really what that's telling you is that the data furnisher is coming back to the bureau and saying, we are in compliance with federal law as far as being able to verify the information is reporting accurately. So sometimes that happens. I've seen in the not tens of thousands, in the hundreds of thousands of clients that I've serviced over a decade, I've seen credit reports where everything got deleted. And it wasn't because it was identity theft or fraud or anything, just because there's a lot of old stuff and things really went that client's way. Happens. I've seen credit reports where nothing gets deleted because the data furnisher was able to come back and say, this is legit, it's all up and up. Okay, Tim with a question. Tim, round 1 received a letter from collection company today. After looking through paperwork, there was not any signatures, I'm not sure what you mean. Called and gave them name and last 4 of social, and they could not pull anything. Okay, so the great thing about, and just let me know if I'm not on track with you here, Tim, as far as the comment goes. Collections have to comply with an even more strict set of laws than the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They have to also comply with what's called the FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And I'll tell you what, that's a pain in the butt for collections to comply with a lot of the time. One of the things, and maybe this is the direction you were going in, Tim, is as far as signatures, they don't have to produce anything that's got your signatures on it. That's what you're referring to. All they have to do is just show a chain of ownership and that they own the debt. But that could be problematic enough. A lot of times what happens is, and it depends on the collection company, if they were assigned the debt, meaning the original creditor, say it's American Express, they assigned the debt to a collection company. So American Express still owns it, but they're just not in the business of trying to collect. And this company is collecting on American Express's behalf. When you have those, unless there's something demonstrably wrong, very obviously wrong about the account, a lot of times they will provide all that documentation very easily. They'll have all of your records because they can just go right back to, in this case, American Express, and get all that information. Now, that's a collection company that was assigned your debt. Now, if it's a debt buyer like LVNV or Midland Funding or Enhanced Recovery, maybe you recognize these if you've got a collection or two on your credit report. If you don't, then that's even better. These are debt buyers, which means they buy debt, cancel, close debt, buy it on spreadsheets. Usually they don't have all the information that they're required to have, and they're just counting on you to not know that. Most people have no idea what the laws are, so they'll send you a collection letter, a collection documentation, and then hopefully you'll pay it. So that's how the collections work. So Tim, the fact that they couldn't find that stuff, things might be looking up for you. So round one, typically what we see on round one, again, this is just happens a lot. It's not always, so don't take anything that I say here as this is what's going to happen for you. But a lot of that low-hanging fruit tends to come off on your round one, meaning older stuff, paid stuff, things that are hard to verify. Sometimes a lot of these data furnishers just have auto delete protocols where if you dispute something and they have it in their file in a way where they know they can't verify it, sometimes they'll just delete it. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 rounds. I've seen collections come off in round 4 and 5. Surprises me sometimes, but either Credit Versio finds an error or something just really, the collection company just really doesn't have the data, or they just get tired responding to it. Who knows? Jamie, curious as to how many times a collection agency can report on a specific account per month to the credit bureaus legally. I have 2 collection agencies reporting multiple times per month. Well, they only update their file. Usually, we call it updating the tape. Usually just once a month. That's usually all that they do. The way that it works, Jamie, and for you watching, everybody watching, is every billing period typically, every 30 days for a collection company, because they don't really have billing periods, they're going to just update the account. Now, even if nothing happened, all they're doing is just sending information saying, yeah, the account has gone unchanged. And by the way, people think, when they update it, it resets the 7 years or it causes the score to go down. It's not what happens at all. As you put your time between the collection and you recover from it. So, Jamie, you're only going to really see one update per month unless you've done something, unless you satisfied it or paid it, and then it's going to report a zero balance. But apart from that, they're not really making any changes. Okay, so let's go back to talking about best practices when it comes to dispute letters. So a couple things I want to share with you. First of all is what goes on in the dispute process. So the reason why Credit Versio and anybody that's in the repair space, not that we're a credit repair company, we're just giving you the software where you can do it yourself and do it just as effectively as a full service white glove credit repair company. What's happening is when you send that dispute letter to the bureau, which by the way, you always want to do a bureau dispute, not direct creditor. The reason why I've always favored bureau disputes, and this is the professional standard, is because you're recruiting the bureau to help you. Like I said a minute ago, I don't know if you caught it, but if data furnishers don't supply correct information, or they supply stuff that is not complete, that was the third one, erroneous, outdated, incomplete. Number 3, the bureau will take it upon themselves and remove the information. Now, despite the popular sentiment, bureaus are your friend. Okay, they're not out to get you. There's no conspiracy. They really do want the data to be correct. That's all they're looking to do. So when you send a dispute letter to the credit bureaus, it comes in, it's scanned, and then it goes via eOscar. So eOscar is a connection. It's like workable software that the bureaus have with all data furnishers. So when that dispute comes through, it creates what's called an ACDV. It's an automatic credit dispute verification, and the creditor works that dispute inside of eOscar. So what happens is when you send that dispute letter, and this is what I'm going to get to first about creating simple, straightforward dispute letters. When you send in a dispute, the best format is simple. 1 or 2 sentences, 3 sentences. Hey, I'm disputing this account. Here's the account number from my credit report on this date. And I don't remember ever being late on any of this. Can you verify? This shows a balance. I don't have a balance. The balance that's shown on Equifax is different than what's being shown on Experian and TransUnion. So very, very clear. Okay. Now, the reason why that's the best is because remember, most of the time there are going to be people who are reading this. And when that dispute letter comes through, you can tell as long of a story as you really want. In fact, I have a friend of mine that used to work in dispute resolution for TransUnion. She said one time she got a 100-page dispute letter. Now, that 100-page dispute letter, unless it was just packed full of evidence, which it probably wasn't, she told me it was a story. It was a long story. When that letter gets scanned, I want you to understand this. It gets reduced to a 3-digit code. And then it gets worked probably somewhere overseas via eOscar. And that 3-digit code is really what's going to determine what that processor who's working for the Bureau overseas is going to do. Now, there's some workers that are here in the U.S., but not unless it's escalated. Most are in India, South America, Jamaica. That's where a lot of your disputes are being processed. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying that the person that gets this long dispute letter, it comes over as an attached file. They got to open it up. May read it, may not read it. Who knows? But they're going to assign a 3-digit code. I'll give you a couple of them. Like a 3-digit code is, here's one, 001, not his or hers. Okay, 010, settlement or partial payment accepted. 038, claims account closed by consumer. So there's only 29 of these codes. And that's why I want to impress upon you that you don't have to tell these big stories. Very simple, very to the point. In fact, I'll show you. Here is a, let's see, where is the dispute letter? Here we go. All right, hopefully we can all see this. Here's an older credit Versio dispute letter. Doesn't matter if it's older or not because the dispute letters really haven't changed. Okay, so I want to show you this. This is, by the way, it's all you need. This is absolutely all you need. If you were to download a dispute template from the CFPB, that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or the FTC, the FTC, oh my God, Fair Trade Commission, Jesus. It's been one of those days. Okay, Federal Trade Commission, excuse me. So when you download one of these templates, this is kind of what they look like. They're very to the point. You don't have to be super creative. And when you hear people say, "Oh, you can't use a template letter," are you kidding me? A lot of the letters that the bureaus get are templates that came from the CFPB or the FTC. Those are the regulatory agencies that supervise the bureau. You think the bureaus are going to kick their templates out? Just not going to happen. So basic template disputes are perfectly fine. Bureaus don't care. They just want to know what you're disputing. That's it. Real easy. So I'm not sure if you can see no, you unfortunately can't see my cursor on the screen. Okay, so if you look at it, you'll see your name and address at the top, then a place for your social and the date of birth, and below that, this is addressed to TransUnion. And then below that, Dear TransUnion, I'm writing to dispute the following information that appears on my TransUnion report from, this is a dispute letter from a while ago. Okay, and there it is, discover credit card account, such and such, open on this date, and balance of such and such. I don't remember ever being late on this payment. Please provide statements and records of all payments made or missed since I opened the account. Okay, basic. That's all that it is. Now, when you get into, when Credit Versio is creating dispute letters that are more complex, like there's real errors. Errors where there's contradictions from one bureau to the next. Okay, that's when Credit Versio is going to go into a little bit more detail and explain, okay, I found an error from TransUnion versus Equifax, or this is a duplicate, or hey, this was a collection that was deleted 3 months ago and now a new collection company has bought it and it's the same original creditor. I mean, Credit Versio is very, very sophisticated in its ability to find problems and errors. One of the things that I've told everybody, just being in this space for as long as I have, the average person who's not accustomed to looking at a credit report can find, maybe 2, 3 errors. A professional who's been looking at credit reports for years and years, who's in the business of dispute processing, can probably find maybe 8 to 12 errors, but it takes a long time, especially when you're comparing 2 credit reports side by side and trying to figure out what was deleted, what was repaired, what stayed the same, what was added, and what changed from last month's credit report to this month's credit report. That's the stuff that's really problematic. So maybe 8, 12 or so that a professional can find. Credit Versio can find 20 because it's just reading data. It's a data form. That's all the credit report is. It's a data form. Okay, so very, very basic stuff. Now, if you have evidence, if you have something that's genuinely wrong with an account on your credit report and you have some receipts or you have a letter, I'll give you a great example. I had years ago when I had paid off, I'd settled an old tax lien. By the way, tax liens and judgments aren't on credit reports anymore, not as of July of 2018. But I had disputed, I had paid it off. It was supposed to be removed. Bureaus wouldn't remove it. I had a letter from the IRS stating it had been paid and that they had given instructions to the bureaus to remove it. I sent it. It was removed like that next month. So if you have any kind of documentation, then include it. If you don't, okay. But just keep it short and to the point. Okay. Any questions so far? We're talking about simplicity in your dispute letter. Okay, let me give you some things to not do. This is where people really, really mess this up. And I blame not people who mess up their own disputes, but I blame the credit repair industry for giving people bad advice. And I'll give you an example right here. One of the things you want to keep in mind is that when the Fair Credit Reporting Act was written in 1970, the whole point was to empower people to fix problems on their credit report. Okay, it was giving you and me the ability to redress problems that we found on our credit report. Credit reports are very, very important documents. They dictate a lot of the options that we have in our financial life. So our government wants us to be able to have some say in it. So in that document, there's also something, it's called Exclusion G or Exception G, where it says, hey, listen, people are empowered to dispute anything that they want. The burden of proof, the burden of performance is actually on the data furnisher, so this is our creditor, and also to a degree the bureaus. Okay, the bureaus are culpable for everything that's on your credit report. Now, having said that, if that letter is sent by or created by a credit repair company, then that letter can be discarded. Now, I've put this in posts, I've done it in videos, and I can't tell you how many credit repair people have said, oh, no, they have to respond. No, I've had people tell me, nowhere in the Fair Credit Reporting Act does it say that. Well, except for right here. So this follows section, I believe, 611, that outlines everything that the bureaus and the data furnishers must do. And it's just pages and pages. The FCRA is about 90 pages long. It's been, the last time it was revised was 2018. I think it's been revised about a dozen times or so. Those revisions were very superficial, not major revisions. And after you have page after page after page of the Fair Credit Reporting Act telling the bureaus and data furnishers, this is what you have to do. You have to follow all these provisions. This is everything you need to do if you receive a dispute. And then at the end of all of that, it then says, oh, by the way, here's exception G. Exclusion of credit repair organizations. What is that? What is this? What is it about to say here? It says this paragraph shall not apply. So this paragraph goes on for pages and pages. Shall not apply if the notice of dispute is submitted by, is prepared on behalf of the consumer by, or is submitted on a form supplied to the consumer by a credit repair organization. So what does that mean? That means if your letter is either sent by a credit repair company or it even looks like it was, then the bureaus have and the data furnishers have the right to completely discard it. So again, I've had credit repair people go, I didn't know that was ever there. It's been there for 50 years. Okay, let me show you. We got a little reminder not too long ago when COVID busted out a few years back. Where's this letter? Hold on, I want to show you something else. Let's see, where is it? I just had it. Let's see. Bear with me. No, I thought I had it here, but dispute letter, store, bank. Okay, let me get it on the screen for you. Thank you for your patience. I'm hoping this works. There we go. Nope, sorry. That is not what I wanted to show you. Where is it? Ah, here it is. Here it is. Okay. All right. April 1st, 2020. We remember what was going on then. COVID. Let me move off the side here so you can see me. Okay. CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They are the regulatory body for the credit bureaus, actually much of the financial industry. So this is a statement on supervisory and enforcement practices regarding the Fair Credit Reporting Act and Regulation 5 in light of the CARES Act. Remember the CARES Act. I want to show you something here. Oh, page 3. There we go. There we go. Okay. So when the CFPB sends a letter out to the data furnishers and bureaus, and it's only 3 pages long, you know they've probably got something really important to say. Let me expand this a little bit. Here's the important part right here. The Bureau, they're talking about the CFPB. The Bureau reminds furnishers, these are your creditors, and consumer reporting agencies, that's the bureaus, that they may take advantage of statutory and regulatory provisions. Well, what are those? Fair Credit Reporting Act, right there. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about exclusion, exception G, the exclusion of CRAs. That they may take advantage of statutory and regulatory provisions that eliminate the obligation to investigate disputes submitted by credit repair organizations and disputes they reasonably determine to be frivolous. Okay, so what does that mean? That means if your dispute letter looks like it came from a bureau, looks like it was written by a bureau, then they could toss it in the trash, and they'll usually send you a letter letting you know that, hey, we've determined, they'll use this language, we've determined that the dispute was not sent by you. Ever gotten that before? Occasionally, that'll happen with people who send letters with Credit Versio. Very, very rarely, though. But a lot of times, when I was in my previous job for 7.5 years, when I was the VP of my last company, which is one of the largest credit repair companies in the U.S., our clients would get those all the time, and it was a fight out the saloon doors. It was a problem. Okay, let's see. Tim with a question. I'll get back to the whole point I was trying to make. Should I be paying for a credit monitoring service like Identity IQ along with the free the fee from Credit Versio? So Tim, Credit Versio, there's no fee with it. Credit Versio is free software. The only thing you're going to be paying for is your 3-bureau monitoring account. I wish we could find them free, but nobody's got a digital export 3B report with scores. Nobody. They're all paid everywhere. Identity IQ is currently not compatible with Credit Versio. It was for a long time, and then they made a software update which created some security problems. and we became incompatible. And we weren't compatible with them for a while. We still aren't, but we're actually, to give you some good news, we're actually very, very close. We're getting ready to add them back. We have one ticket we need to solve with them, and we're just waiting for them to respond, and then we will add Identity IQ back. However, Tim, unfortunately, it has to be a new account under our affiliate, well, for a couple of reasons. One, we used to not care about that, but we do now because of some security protocols. So if you have Identity IQ, you'd have to close it, call them up and close it, and then you would just reopen a new one once you came to Credit Versio if you wanted Identity IQ. I apologize for that. That's just things are really, really tough just for security reasons, and that's one of the big reasons why we had to do that. Okay. Jamie with a question. Actually, Jamie, hold on real quick. I just want to finish up this thought about dispute letters. So when you have your dispute letters, a couple of things you don't want to do. As I remember, I hope I got your attention earlier. I'm going to give you some things that you don't ever want to do. Okay, don't quote the laws. Okay, don't put in the laws. Don't threaten. Don't be mean. Don't send 10 letters with one account on them that you're disputing. If you got 10 things you're disputing, put them all on one letter. You want to look like what average Joe would look like if he was sent, or she was, in this case Josephine, she sent a dispute letter. Okay, what would the average person write in a dispute letter? Probably be pretty basic. Okay, they wouldn't be quoting the law saying, hey, you have to do this and you have to do that, and under FCRA this and the Rosenthal Act that. The only people who do that are credit repair organizations, and you don't want to get flagged. And it doesn't matter anyway. You don't need to quote laws. It's like the bureaus don't know the laws. Everything they do is regulated by the laws. That's why all three of them, well, all three of the big ones. That's why every credit repair, credit bureau functions the same way. I mean, it's minor differences internally what they do, but for the most part, everything that they do as far as handling disputes is very similar because they're all heavily regulated. Okay, I hope that inspired you a little bit, because I see a lot of people putting in stuff in their dispute letters, even with Credit Versio. I've seen people try to put Metro 2 code in there. It's like, come on, you don't need that. You want to get, nothing's going to happen if you do that. It's just going to confuse people. All right, let's see. Jamie, okay, thanks. I have a follow-up on my previous question. Can a collection agency sue during a dispute, and or does disputing extend the time-barred debt date? Great question. I have a recent collection that just showed up this month, but the date of first default with the, hold on. It's a big question. OC is from 4 to 10 months ago, and the SOL in my state is 5 years. Okay, so statute of limitations, 5 years. Any possible way I could keep them tied up in the dispute for the next 2 months, just in case they decide to try and sue? So, Jamie, there's nothing punitive about the dispute process, and I want you to take this one to the bank, because I've asked this question before. I've asked this of data furnishers. I've asked this of collection. Actually, we had a panel one time. This was back in 2013, where we had a bunch of collection companies at one of our events for a Q&A, which is actually kind of interesting because it was a bunch of credit repair people in the audience and collection companies up on stage. And one of the things that they made pretty clear is, if they're going to sue you, it has nothing to do with any disputes. These are two different hands of the process. Now, do people get sued? Do we hear about people getting sued during the dispute process? Yeah, but they were going to get sued anyway. The dispute process didn't have anything to do with that. Usually, if they're going to file a lawsuit against you, it's something that was decided upon probably long before you even started the dispute process at all. So that's not really a component to all this. What I would say, and if you've been on with me and John, and it sounds like, and Jamie, I know that you've been on here with me and John, if you've been here 6 times in the past. One of the things that you'll hear both of us say is, having outstanding collections is kind of like playing with fire a little bit, because even though A lot of collection companies don't sue. There are some that's part of their business model. And if you have an outstanding debt, um, you always run that risk. There's always that possibility that they might take that for whatever reason they might decide that's the way they're going to reclaim that debt. So let me just go through and see here. Dispute or disputing does not extend the time bar at all. If you were to pay something, then that probably could. But disputing doesn't reset. Disputing has nothing to do with the statute of limitations or the time bar date. Okay, that's all set by the DOFD. That's the date of first default. And disputing is not going to change anything. Okay, let's see. I have a recent collection that just showed up this month, the DOFD, with the original creditors from 4 years, 10 months ago. And the statute of limitation in my state is 5 years. Yeah, I mean, I will tell you this, though, Jamie. When I've heard collection company reps say this, that there's a lot of variables that go into the decision whether or not they're going to sue. If one of the variables is that they're going to do it before the statute of limitations runs out, then you're probably getting pretty close to that. It depends, though, too. Like, what's the dollar amount? I mean, if it's a few $100, I've heard of collection companies suing people over a few $100, but it's been a long time. It's fun. It's funny because I've seen I've seen or had conversations with people where I saw collections on their account for $20,000, $30,000. Not medical either. Not to where it could be maybe a little difficult to kind of parse out. If that's all one big debt or if it's a bunch of little ones all put together. And they never got sued. And the thing got deleted and they never heard from the collection company again. And then I've seen people get sued over a couple $100. I mean, you never know. It's crazy. Of course, I haven't heard that in a while now. But, unfortunately, there's always going to be that element of risk. Now, I will tell you this, Jamie. If they are able to verify everything and it's not deleted after round 3, if you get that knock on the door or somebody shows up and they serve you papers, man, you get on the phone and you call that collection company and you settle, because you do not want to go to court. Rarely. The only time I ever hear of people winning in court is when the collection company's lawyer didn't show up. Strangely, that happens quite a bit, but that's the only time I ever hear it. So don't run the risk. Hey, Gregory, good to see you. It's been a little while. Rick, I'm in round 1 but skipped a few inquiry disputes because I didn't want the creditor to cancel the account. Is this ever common? Yeah. In fact, when you select inquiries, Rick, what happens in Credit Versio is you get a pop-up. And the pop-up will let you know, hey, you don't want to really dispute accounts where they're open, like a credit card account that you just applied for or anything else, especially unsecured debt. Like if you did it with a car, I mean, they're not going to come take the car back from you. But if you opened up a Chase account or an Amex and they gave you the card, and then 2-3 months later you disputed the inquiry, they're going to be like, whoa, did we just give Rick? Who is this guy? Did we just give somebody a card under Rick's name and it wasn't Rick? Because why else would he be disputing the inquiry? Yeah, so don't do that. This is aside from the fact, Rick, that inquiries are really inconsequential. Like I saw a so-called credit expert do a little breakdown of the FICO chart. And the area for new credit is 10% of your score. It's new credit. It doesn't say inquiries, it's new credit. And in that category, there are multiple things that make up that 10%. It's not just inquiries. Inquiries are not 10% of your score. That's a gross misrepresentation. But a lot of people believe that. So inquiries are one of those things where people pay too much attention to it. They're mostly inconsequential to your score. No version of FICO even cares about an inquiry once it hits the 12-month mark. So, Rick, you've probably got bigger fish to fry. I wouldn't worry about your inquiries. And I certainly wouldn't dispute an inquiry from a creditor who told you yes. That's not really a good idea. Jamie, $6,000. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that isn't a substantial amount. So I would just keep a close eye on what's going on. If you get that, the hairs in the back of your neck start raising because you think they're they're getting ready to do something aggressive, then you get on the phone with them and you pay. I'm going to say as a default position, always pay debts that you owe. I mean, this isn't a moral thing. I'm just telling you that's a position where you're always going to get yourself out of trouble. And even though there might be nothing significant to be gained on your credit report or your score by doing it, the new contemporary scoring models, so I'm talking about FICO 9, 10, 10T, and Vantage Score 3 and 4, they ignore paid collections, just so you know. Now, the older scoring models don't, but that was only ever a problem when people were trying to buy homes because they were using old scoring models. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but in about a year and a half, 2 years from now, FHFA mandated that the new scoring models be used. FICO T. T's for trended. This is going to be amazing. And also Vantage Score 4 also works with trended data. So if you're that person that pays your bills on time, you have low credit card debt, this is going to be a boon for you. This is going to be fantastic. So also too, what that means is paid collections not really looked at all that hard. Okay. All right. Brandon, just sneaking in there at the very end as we're about to jump off. Brandon, I have collections. They have a past date amount. I've never agreed to pay them. Is that information that will require them to delete it? Let's see. Let me read this one more time, see if I understand what you're asking. I have collections. They have a past due amount. I've never agreed to pay them. Is that information that will require them to delete it? Your agreement to pay them or not, Brandon, is irrelevant. And collections get deleted for lots of different reasons. Now, even though a dispute might say I have no financial relationship, I have no obligation to pay. Really, what that's a dispute that's inspired by the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. But I want you to understand something. A debt that a collection company has is an asset. So I'm not sure if you just recently jumped on, but I gave an example earlier about American Express, whether a debt was assigned or purchased. So let's say, I'll give you a real life example. Let's just say that one of the cards that was charged off for me back in the day was an Amex card for like $7,000, and they sold that debt to Midland. So they didn't assign it; they sold it. Now, American Express immediately put a zero balance, and that it was a collection charge-off, specifically a charge-off. And then it was purchased by Midland. Midland now owned that debt. Okay, just like Brandon, you can own a car. Okay, that's an asset. You can do with that asset virtually whatever you want. If you want to sell it to me, you have full rights to sell it to me. It belongs to you. And we can do the paperwork, and now belongs to me. It's the same thing with debt. So that debt, for that American Express debt for $7,900, I think is what it was once owned by American Express, and they sold it to Midland Funding. Midland Funding is now my new creditor. They legally own that debt. They can legally collect it from me. That's the way that works. Now, as it turns out, I was able to get that deleted from my credit report. That came off, I think, the second or third round way back in the day. And the reason is because Midland bought that off of a spreadsheet, most likely, and didn't have the documentation they're required to have to prove that they own that debt. Okay, that's just the way the collection industry can work sometimes. So it's completely irrelevant that you didn't agree to pay, or that I didn't agree to pay Midland. My relationship or my agreed to pay American Express actually carries over. Now that asset is owned by Midland Funding. So just so you understand how that works. Okay, last question, then we're going to wrap it up. Jamie, you with the big questions. All right, so agree 100%. All my draws happened 6 years, 9 months ago during specific life circumstances. Every debt has been paid on time, and even with multiple draws still hanging on for a couple more months. And the new collection of my FICO 8 is 650. Okay, so yeah, so Jamie, you've recovered from a lot of that stuff. Really, when I hear that, and I hear a 650 rather than like a 720 or a 750, just means you got to rebuild. All of your negative stuff is just, some of it's going to be falling off like right now. And worst case scenario, you've got a couple of months before all of that stuff from 6 years and 9 months falls off. And then and you've largely recovered from it anyway. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is you're not haunted by negative credit for 7 years. It's there cosmetically for 7 years. But largely you recover from things in about 24 to 36 months, provided that you are paying things on time, that you have other good credit. So really what the whole scoring models operate off of is 24 months. You want to know what your score means? Your score is a formulaic representation of your likelihood of going into default in the next major default, in the next 24 months. What's a major default? 90 days late or worse. That's what that score means. Okay, the higher the score, the lower the probability you're likely to go into major default in the next 24 months. So really what creditors care about is what is the last 24 month look like, so I can predict what Jamie, what Brandon, what Rick, what Gregory's going to do in the next 24 months. But when things get older than 24 months, they become less and less and less significant. And the things that become more significant is, what have you done for me lately? Okay, what are you doing now? How are you paying your bills now? So Jamie, for you, it's, if you need more credit, think about getting an authorized user. Okay, we got a great video in the training, in the coaching section, that talks about authorized user. I forgot what video it is. I think it might be 6 or 7. And just keep rebuilding. You'll watch that score pop up, especially when that stuff drops off. I mean, you might see a little bit of a bump, but it'll definitely help you acquire new credit if you need it. Okay, that is it for me. Thank you so much to the dozen of you that are still on. If you have a question, if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to pop it into the comment section on Facebook. Unfortunately, I can't see YouTube comments for the live for whatever reason, probably user error. And that's about it. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back next Wednesday, and I think I'll have John Alzheimer with me. So please join me then. Thank you so much.